Hello, everyone, and good evening, Marco. Welcome, everyone, to this in-depth discussion spanning the topics of the 100 person survey, or the survey of 100, which is a joke but tells an important story. And then we explore two possible solutions to the quagmire embedded in that story, or that is the punchline of that story. And one of those solutions is Operation Welcome Home, or something similar to that, but it's hard to think of anything similar to that. That one is just so powerful. And the second class of solutions would be after parties to, drumroll, I'm going to say three words, they're hyphenated: non-Zoom based. So not Zooming kind of, you know, uh, people, but rather broadcasters, people who are just broadcasting YouTube videos, like Paul Beckwith, for example. Anyway, that's what we're going to go into depth here on. Any questions about the agenda, or do we just resolve them as we go?
I think we go with the flow.
Okay, so here's the survey of 100. So the top 100 Zoom-based, conversationalists, leaders, people who convene other people in these, big long meetings where we boil the ocean and solve the world's problems, right? So the survey of 100, it's a joke, it's a story that's supposed to be funny, but also has a profound truth. These top 100, the top 100 leaders of these Zoom meetings for solving the world's problems and transforming humanity and bringing humanity together, they were all asked the following question: what is it going to take in order to bring humanity together and, transform ourselves and solve the world's problems? That was the question. Play it back if you need to, right?
But I know the answer.
Well, you have your answer. These top 100 leaders all had their own answers. And guess what? All of their answers were identical in the words that they used, right? Watch for the wrinkle there. Their answer was, everybody come to my Zoom space, right? Not just Zoom room, but main room and breakout rooms, or even multiple Zoom rooms or whatever. They all had the same answer: come to my Zoom room, right? And as funny as that may be or not, it's kind of the reality where there is competition among the top 100 leaders, and that creates fragmentation. So it's this invisible competition, and ego and greed that has driven so many of us into trying to be that one, coolest party on the block or whatever. And so now I propose two categories of solutions to that quagmire of fragmentation because of competition, ego, greed, etc., and other elements, aspects of the general fragmentation and separation. One category of solutions is the category that includes Operation Welcome Home. There's a larger category of those kinds of solutions, but as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I don't see any possible solution that could come anywhere close to Operation Welcome Home, which is all about our supporting, healing, and creating community for our nation's veterans. And we're going to talk about that extensively on the Block Party, starting at 12 noon Pacific. And what characterizes this category of solutions, of which Operation Welcome Home is the leader, is that it is something that becomes so universal that everyone supports it, and there's really no possible competitor to it. So it's not like the survey of 100 that we talked about a few minutes ago. It's not like that, in that there are no competitors, there is no separation, there is just one body of American veterans who are a very well constituted, extremely well-defined community, that when brought together in such a beautiful way as Operation Welcome Home, results in the inevitable birth of a collective human superintelligence, or a CHISI, around that community. In this case, a community that's over 20 million in number, right? So that's one solution to the quagmire, is you create something that is so universal. American veterans, and every American loves our veterans. And in this case, they've really been treated not as well as they should. Let's just leave it that way, leave it at that. And this is a way to elevate that all the way past whatever level we quote unquote should, and freaking go stratospheric with it. And I think that will result in an exponentially growing CHISI, first among the veterans, the community of veterans, and then around those concentric circles around the veterans, their family, their neighbors, their neighborhood, right? Their township or community, their city, their county, their state, their country. I mean, look at all the layers. Their planet, and ultimately it'll encompass their planet. And so, but it can be this beautiful ice-9 crystal of not just the minimum critical mass, but something orders of magnitude larger than whatever the minimum critical mass might be. Minimum critical mass, we talked about 100 people, right? What if 100 people were to come together, right? All of whom, really got it and were deep into it and absolutely committed. We're talking about a number which is orders, like 5 orders of magnitude greater than that. Now, will we get every single veteran participating? In various degrees. And but I think what's going to emerge in terms of the veteran CHISI is going to be so absolutely magnetic and attractive that it'll ripple out to the whole world, to all communities all around the world. But anyway, so that's one class of solution to the quagmire of separation, fragmentation, competition, even violent competition. We've seen character assassination attempts and actual character assassination against, specific leaders by other leaders in that same, group of 100, right? So,
you just mentioned veteran CHISI, but I don't think in this, you should probably define CHISI at this point, because I don't think
here
in this video.
Okay, let me screen share. I'm taking some notes here. All right. So CHSI is the acronym, CHSI, which stands for Collective Human Super Intelligence. Collective Human Super Intelligence. That's what we call CHSI. And so a veteran CHSI is simply that, emergent out of an explosive network of conversations and interactions within the veteran community. On a platform like Zoom, so we've talked in the past about a veteran Zoomosphere, right? As being one way in which to implement this exponentially growing network of conversations. Imagine each of these circles or splotches, sorry, is a conversation, a specific conversation that happens, and that happens over the course of time, right? Off into the future, but it's also over as a function of time, it's also growing exponentially as represented by this blue and white pair of arrows. And it's a pair of arrows because it's growing exponentially in so many different directions simultaneously, the different colors representing different directions of growth, different vectors of growth, right? And they're all going exponential. That's what CHSI is. That's what the veteran CHSI would be. But then if the conversations colored in as white circles are the veterans, we might have conversations with non-veterans, which might be these green ones, right? And there will be connections. Each of these white lines and each of these green lines represents a connection into the between conversations. So this conversation of non-veterans right here that I'm drawing as this big green splotch could have all kinds of connections with veteran conversations. And, just because a conversation is a veteran conversation doesn't mean they can't have guests. So they can invite whoever they want as guests, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's still a veteran-led or veteran-hosted conversation. But we'll end up ultimately blurring the lines between these different, communities. You've got veterans, you've got elders, you've got artists, you've got, so many different professions and skill sets and trades, and you're just going to have all these connections. And some of these connections will be veterans reaching out and forging connections amidst and amongst these other networks, right? And you can have connections of different kinds. The green connections being originating from one of the green communities, whatever community that is, the blues, et cetera. Anyway, you get the idea. Any questions about this before I get off screen share?
No.
CHSI? Okay. Anyway, this network of conversations becomes effectively like this giant planetary brain, containing all these different neurons. Each conversation is like a neuron, which can then fire, and other neurons can, other conversations, other neurons can pick up on that, and then even reach back out to the transmitter and say, hey, let's have a mashup. Let's bring our two conversations together, right? So all things are possible. And so it's just a crude analogy to a brain made of all these neurons and synaptic connections. Again, the lines are connections, the circles are the neurons, or the splotches are the neurons. And, so it's analogous to a brain, but I mean, whereas a neuron just basically fires a 0 or a 1 with different levels of intensity, here we're firing entire transcripts, recordings. Like this is a conversation right now that we're having right here, right now, and we're transmitting it, we're broadcasting it through publication of its recording. Anyway, I'm going a little deeper than I intended to. Any other questions or comments or expansions upon, the above?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just figured it was good to put it in context for those that haven't been following along with the Chizzy so far.
Yep. Good call, Marco. Thank you. So anyway, so that's one whole class of solutions is, a Chizzy emergent out of bringing a community together. But this is a community that's so big that yearns to be together so much, that as it comes together through Operation Welcome Home, or, whatever vehicle will bring them together, they're going to come together with such impact. It's going to be like a black hole sucking in with tremendous gravitational force all 22 million, American veterans. And then the other countries will follow around the world will follow suit. And the next thing you know, all veterans are loved and honored and cared for and nourished and housed and um, and that I don't remember where I was going with that. Any help? In fact, let me just
Well,
look up.
I think something you said that was important when you were, saying about the bigger circles around the veterans, how the effect is.
Yeah, the concentric circles.
Yeah. The fact that when you improve the life of one person, it has ripple effects. And when you improve the life of a group of people, it has ripple effects. And what you illustrated really beautifully was the fact that as that you got the veteran, well, the veteran has a family, most of them, some don't, and then that's when we become their family, because we are one family, we're one human family.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Exactly.
think, and so focusing on, doing as Chief Bill says often, the hurt of the one is the hurt of the many, and the healing of the one is also the healing of the many.
Yeah, the hurt of one is the hurt of all. We all feel it. It impacts all of us that one of us is hurting. We try to deny that. We try to say, no, it's all a game about these points that we accumulate called dollars. And, but these are universal truths that are immutable. And so, the ultimate solution is the coming together of all humanity for the transformation of humanity and the saving and healing and transforming of all of life on Earth, which is a big mouthful. It's a big statement. A lot of people could challenge that. But, getting that fundamental principle, I would say, is kind of a prerequisite for this level of conversations. Now, as soon as I mention prerequisite, that implies separation. There are those who have, assimilated something and those who haven't. And so rather than say prerequisite, let's just say it's a defining, um, the ridge that defines a division, a boundary between two watersheds comes to mind, right? It's simply a watershed, and you're either on one side or you're on the other side of that. And there could be, recorded, transcribed public debates on the issue, right? But basically, either you get it or you don't. Either you get or you do not get that the biggest urgency for humanity right now is the urgency to come together as a collective human superintelligence, as a Chizzy. And for those familiar with Kurt Vonnegut's book, Cat's Cradle, the seed crystal, the Ice Nine seed crystal, right? Which had to be, well, I mean, it could have been a speck, it could have been a, you know, like a speck of powder, but so it's not about the size. Judge me by my size, will you? Said Yoda, right? So it's not about size. It's about a configuration that has a minimum critical mass. You need a minimum critical mass of water molecules to form a crystal, a viable crystal of ice-9. You can't just do it with one water molecule or two or three, but there's a certain number that need to be there. So there's a critical mass of, in this case, conversations that, and we don't know what that number is. Could be 100 conversations, could be 10 conversations, but it has to be some critical mass that will then take off exponentially, right? With Operation Welcome Home, you know, over 20 million American veterans are instantly recruited, well, instantly over the course of the months that it takes us to roll it out across the entire country, but that rollout's going to grow exponentially. And so, but we have to have the right critical starting mass. In the case of Operation Welcome Home, we kind of cheat because we're starting with like 22 million right out of the box, right? So if you're not familiar with Operation Welcome Home, please join us for that meeting. Anyway, that's one whole, class of kind of instant solutions. When I say instant, I mean virtually instant, that you get literally orders of magnitude beyond the critical mass that you would actually need. So instead of showing up with just one microscopic, outer granule of ice-9, which may be the critical mass that's required, instead of that, you instead have like a whole macro-sized, cubic centimeter mega crystal, right, with like Avogadro's number of water molecules instead of the minimum required, 100 or 200 or 50 or 10 or whatever the heck the number is, right? And Doc Time really pays close attention to that number, and for good reason. He's trying to find the count, I would say, or he's found the count, and now he's testing that number experimentally in the world. But you'll meet Doc Time at the during the podcast. The start is near, and the start of what, of exponential growth. So we're almost there, just kind of organically growing, but my goodness, Operation Welcome Home would get us orders of magnitude beyond what we need. It's like, hey, Marco, the 10-year-old version of Marco, what do you want for your birthday? A bicycle. And then this freight train shows up with literally 100,000 bicycles, which is roughly the ratio between the minimum required and what we're going to end up with. But then the ripple effects take you out to communities in other countries. It's not just 22 million American veterans, right? We're 5% of the world's population. So we're talking now hundreds of millions of veterans worldwide. And imagine they start connecting, forming, connections. The German veterans, the American veterans, the Japanese veterans, etc. They start forming connections. And suddenly you have kind of like not a United Nations, but a United Veterans, hundreds of millions strong. And these are precisely our heroes, our warriors, right? In my book, there's two kinds of what I call ultimate volunteers, right? One of the ultimate volunteers is mothers, the mothers of the world, because they volunteer their bodies, their lives, to caring for these youngsters. And the process never ends it's from cradle to grave that they do their volunteer work. And the other ultimate volunteers that I consider are veterans, right? So, who better to lead the world than her warriors, her veterans, right? Her elders. Not all veterans are elders. You've got, 20-year-old veterans, you know, 21, of all ages, all the way up to over 100. Who better? I mean, it's like Operation Welcome Home, I think just blows away any other possible solution. There's one, but then there's that one other class of possible solutions. Did I name it in the brief intro? I'm not sure, but anyway, that branch of solutions is the after parties to non-Zoom based broadcasters like Paul Beckwith, people who just publish YouTube videos, for example, like Paul Beckwith, or people who blog or whatever, but it's a one-way broadcast with,
Right.
very little possibility for feedback, comments in a YouTube video, for crying out loud. That's not a conversation. That's prisoners of this heavy constraint passing notes under the door. How do you like that? Passing notes under the jail cell, sliding doors. I mean, it's not a conversation. That's the bottom line. Anywhere near the richness that you get with Zoom. See, here we've got real-time feedback. You smile, and I get that you get it, and that means great. I landed my point. I don't need to ask you. But if we're writing comment, do you see what I mean? I don't know. Do you mean this? Give me a break. And it's asynchronous, and it's not a conversation. So it's a one-way broadcast to a first approximation, to a very good first approximation. It's a one-way. This is two-way, right? And but it actually ultimately becomes all way, because to the extent these conversations are recurring, and a conversation worth its salt is a recurring conversation, it has to be recurring. They have to keep refining and perfecting the knowledge and the implications of it. And right now we're nowhere near that. So we need a lot of conversations to clarify a lot of stuff. How urgent is this global warming thing after all? Do we have till 2050? Do we have till 2100? Are we out of time? Do we have 10 months? Do we have 2 years? How much time do we have? Well, we got to figure that out. Well, it's impossible to know. Come on. We can estimate it within a range. Let's get over that. That's one of those things that either you get it or you don't, right?
It may be impossible to know the exact when, but it's very possible, and we know what the result will be, the end of life as we know it.
Yeah. And either you get that or you don't, right? And well, what is it that there is to get? Okay, let's have conversations about that too. Conversations of synthesis of all the most important critical information, not just about global warming, but about plant-based diet and a diet for a healthy planet. There's two sides to the destruction of the planet. There's overheating and then everything else. But what complicates it is that overheating causes virtually everything else, but it's not its only cause. Planetary overheating is not the only cause of deforestation through forest fires, right? So is logging. So is, human-made slash and burn. Humans have been doing slash and burn since way before global warming, right? Or this modern exponential phase of global warming. So it's all intertwined. And so we need the whole truth, not just parts of the truth. And we need to know what's truth and what are lies. And Chizzy can figure that out. AI has the luxury of swimming in the murky waters that exist today amongst humanity and being able to manufacture, fake news and manipulate people and cause separation and fragmentation. But a Chizzy that relies on human interactions and not reading some, feed on your phone or whatever the hell, right? Or on TikTok, your fucking, your feed, Facebook, whatever you watch, whoever you follow on YouTube or X or whatever the hell. So, listen, if we keep swimming in those murky waters and stay separate from each other and divided by the murkiness, the AI is going to just run circles around us, and we're pretty much finished as a species. If, on the other hand, we manifest Chizzy, right? There's manifest destiny, and then there's manifest Chizzy. With manifest Chizzy, if we manifest Chizzy, we can co-create our own destiny, co-create. Anyway, I don't want to go too deep on that, but let's get on to the second class of solutions beyond, non-Zoom based broadcasters, one-way broadcasters like Paul Beckwith, doing an after party for Paul Beckwith, ideally a series of after parties for Paul Beckwith, right? We've been trying to get a hold of Paul for months. If you watch this video and you know Paul Beckwith, please contact him. Right? Now it's starting to sound like a Michael Moore documentary, but whatever it takes, but we use Paul Beckwith as an example, but really that's a whole class of solutions, because any broadcaster with significant audience who's never done a block party, an after party, they suddenly do an after party. What does that mean? Well, instead of just doing their broadcast and posting it on YouTube and walking away, they tell their whole audience, they tell the internet, they tell the world, hey, we're going to be doing this, broadcast, my normal podcast, recorded and, saved, posted on my YouTube channel. In addition to doing that, at the end of the broadcast, anyone who's watching can just jump into my Zoom room and we're going to have an after party. And it's a very simple idea. What the two classes of solution have in common is they're about bringing together community that has heretofore been kept separate, right?
Yeah.
And bringing them together, there's this homecoming feeling. My goodness, I've been wanting to meet the rest of you for so long, right? One of my first bosses in the private sector, at a major engineering company, which for a time was the largest in the world amongst engineering companies. My boss came from a family of 10 and from Australia, and they were going to meet like the next summer for the first time in I don't know how many years, 25 years, that all 10 of them were together. That's what humanity needs. It needs that coming together where we all come together, right? And, for decades, it was just like the essence of a John Lennon song, where we're imagining some faraway future. And right now, we're not far, because one way or another, we're going to break through, whether through Operation Welcome Home or whether through a network of after parties of broadcasters or whatever. But in all cases, these are communities that are yearning to come together, and through an appropriate program or solution are able to come together, form a critical mass of conversations that then grows exponentially, because that's what Chizzy wants to do once she's born, once she's properly born, birthed. So the birth of Chizzy. Anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say about all that. Shall we review? Let's review.
I'm thinking, a little more clarity on the after party. The after party is like where everybody has watched,
Okay,
aforementioned video,
yeah,
and meet in a space like a Zoom space where they can interact. And that takes us away from the the broadcast, and takes the people that watch these broadcasts regularly from just being able to see each other's comments to being able to have conversations. And instead of being an audience, they become a community, a functional community.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yep. And you know, when you're together in conversation, that's when ideas happen and solutions come about. And right now we are, we have no shortage of need for solutions to the world's problems. So we need everybody talking to each other and uh, picking the thing that they're passionate about and working on making it work for all of us.
Yeah, and it's all a numbers game, right? It's about getting to the hundreds of millions and then literally the billions, right? Because everyone but, pre-verbal toddlers should be participating in this ultimately. Um, you know, well and deep into the billions of people, and it's all about the numbers because the way that you're going to be able to find your niche and find a massive community that's also passionate about your niche, right? Like one of my passions is cooling the planet. How? Through solar radiation management. Like, for example, marine cloud brightening. Well, I want to find the other, nerds who are into marine cloud brightening and have studied it and listened to, Stephen Salter's, YouTube videos on the subject, et cetera, et cetera. You
He's
can,
done TED Talks too that are uh, searchable.
yeah, exactly. So, um, but the point is that his audience has heretofore been completely fragmented, and um, but it's got to be substantial. There's got to be, I don't know, at a minimum, tens of thousands of us out there around the world, right? Who have drunk Professor Salter's Kool-Aid and want to get together and talk. My goodness, if tens of thousands of us get together and form a critical mass chizzy, or beyond critical mass is probably more like 100 of us who are absolutely committed, but committed to what? Committed to chizzy. It takes something to get chizzy, even in, summer 2024. You have to have, you know, kind of been searching for it and found that, one of the right groups and, gotten into it. So there's not that many of us out there, right? But here's the thing: when the veterans get together, none of, almost nobody knows about the concept of chizzy. And when the veterans get together, it doesn't matter if none of them know about the concept of, well, I know for a fact certain veterans do know about chizzy, but that's kind of, it's not exactly beside the point. Um, the point is those who do know, when they all get together, will be able to, have their turn at the microphone or have their opportunity to create whatever Zoom meeting they want, and they'll put one up and it'll say chizzy. And at the first meeting, maybe 3 or 4 people show up, 3 or 4 veterans. But you know what? It's so powerful that they then invite a bunch of their friends, and whether it's about marine cloud brightening or about chizzy or about biodynamic farming or about veganism or about food healers or about bienvenidos or about El Mexicano or whatever topic, amongst the various delicious topics that we have to delve into. Are any of those non-delicious to you, Marco?
No, it's all
It's
it's
all
it
delicious,
very
right? So what happens is with the Veterans Hemisphere, you literally, the veteran Chizzy, you have so many great conversations going on. There may be some relative isolation early on, but all these connections are going to be made because there are those people who like to roam around and check out all the different conversations. They become cross pollinators. The very text of the transcripts of these conversations going into a common index, that creates connectivity right there, right? Searchability, connectivity, indexability. This is all text-based. This is easy. This was solved a couple decades ago or something, right? So we're at overkill in numbers, we're at overkill in technology and connectivity, but one of the most important factors or elements of all this is precisely this planetary brain, where I use the rough analogy or whatever of a human brain and this network of conversations. But the conversations are vastly more powerful neurons than a 0 or 1 bit, either firing or not, and at what level of intensity. So anyway, we're at a state of planetary urgency right now where we urgently need a planetary Chizzy to solve all our problems. And I've, we've talked in detail about the two different classes of solutions to the quagmire of separation. Anyway, passing the feather.
right now. My brain is already, into somewhere down the road where we've already months into uh mm, my point was it's leaving me without words now because I have all these visual things going on in my head, seeing, veterans and being uh treated well that have not been, and how that improves their mental state and how that translates into the mental state of their families that, are dealing, interacting with them, and it just makes everything better when you treat anybody well. Um, how can we not be doing that every day? Just finding somebody and treating them well, or just, treating everyone well you come in contact with. And when there is such a large group of people that have not been treated well, um, the difference between the negative energy and the positive energy is, it's more than the sum of the two. It's kind of reminds me a little bit of an element of string theory. It's like we can get, rather than the long way around to solving the problems that we've had decades to solve. Now that we don't have time, we need to shorten that. And so we just bring, bring the string together. We don't have to be on the linear thing here. Things move exponentially, and time changes. And that's the way we'll have time to fix what we haven't done in normal time. It's by putting everything together and working as a cohesive group on a planetary scale. That's what it's going to take right now. We finally need to learn how to play together kindly. Yeah, I think that's how I want to look at it. I like it. We finally are going to learn to get on the playground and play kindly.
Yeah, beautiful. And we're also finally going to be brought together because we've just been so fragmented. The fragmentation has just been unreal. With given the context of technologies that we've had for freaking over 40 years now. 50 years. I mean, goodness, they developed the simplex algorithm back in the 50s. I used that to optimize Cemex. All their production, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of tons per year of human-made product. I was using technology that was originally developed back in the 50s. It was crazy. So we've got overkill. We've got decades of overkill of technology, and we've got orders of magnitude overkill of people who can be brought together. Orders of magnitude larger than the necessary critical mass to start exponential growth. So we're right on the cusp. Whether it's done here, and let me screen share here, because with the after parties, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words here. So you see these white things, white structures at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Those represent, like this one here, it looks like an antenna broadcasting, a parabolic antenna or whatever the heck, but it's broadcasting, right? And it's broadcasting, I'm just representing them as these blue lines to a community that's listening, which I'm going to represent as these green circles, right? Well, these green circles are potential conversations that can't actually get off the ground. But once that community is brought together, all these conversations are going to form and connect with each other. And so you'll have a planetary brain just in the form of the audience of this one particular broadcaster. Does that make sense? And then if this broadcaster right here then get through the after party concept gets all of these blue dot conversations, and you see how there's some conversations that are kind of members of both. These might be people, I mean, like, think of the number of people who listen to both Paul Beckwith and Guy McPherson. That's an important intersection because they've got both of those perspectives, right? Well, it turns out there's a massive intersection between those two, communities of conversations that are beckoning to get started, and all they need is an after party to get them all together and to get them to form these conversations, right? And then, bring in the next broadcaster. May not have as much overlap as Paul Beckwith and Guy McPherson, but there's some overlap there, right? We just use the Venn diagrams, And then a fourth broadcaster. Well, dot, dot, dot. Imagine we have, thousands of broadcasters then you're going to just, it's another way of creating a very different kind of planetary brain. My money's on the veterans because they know how to talk to each other. These different people don't necessarily know how to talk to each other, especially if they're American. What do Americans do? Dominance games, arguing, you know, getting angry, and then everybody goes home, right? Anyway, I'm speaking in broad, unfair generalizations, but as El Mexicano, I think I have the right to do that. Anyway, any questions or comments before we bring this lovely video to a conclusion?
Other than, depending on when people see this, and if you don't see it before this current Friday, what's our date?
But what's your point, Marco? I'm trying to wrap this up, and
Is to come and join in the conversation on
come and
Fridays.
join us. My goodness, please. Yeah, I think lately we've been starting it closer to 8 a.m. Pacific time because of food healers. That's fine. But we go for 24 hours, but the sweet spot starts at 12 noon Pacific time and goes for about 4 hours. So please join for that if that's all you got time for.
And of course,
And
link is below.
yep. And we're going to do another short video that basically says the same thing. So let's wrap this one up, which was the long form, and then let's do a short video. Anything else to say on the long form video? And if there is, take your time and say it.
No, I think I'm good. I just, as I'm saying that, this tremendous cloud burst just happened.
All right. I'm going to pause the
now.
video and we'll talk clarity. All right. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the block party. Have a good night, everybody. And if you're not on the block party email list, talk to whoever told you about it, and they'll direct you to one of us, and we'll get you on the email list. All right. Have a good night. See you on the block party. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
And thank you, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Jamin.